Shall I just play it?
Yeah.
By the time I arrived in Auschwitz, I was shaved and a number tattooed. One used to be asked questions by the people who did this, and I said in passing that I used to play the cello. And she said, "That's fantastic, you'll be saved." I didn't understand what was going on. By that time I was naked, without hair. And I was waiting in a corner, and in came a lady, extremely well dressed in a camel hair coat. I had no idea whether this was a prisoner or a guard. I mean, I didn't really know exactly what was going on. It turned out to be the conductor of the orchestra in Auschwitz. Her name was Alma Rosé, and she came from an extremely important musical family. She was a niece of Gustav Mahler and the daughter of Arnold Rosé. And she was absolutely delighted that I had arrived because the orchestra didn't have a bass instrument. So she said, "I'm sorry, you will have to go into quarantine, but you will be called out pretty soon." Now, I'd just like to mention that quarantine was really an unbelievable place. And very few people actually came out of there. It was the first port of call, and for some people the last port of call. We had to stand outside Appel, and most people had dysentery by then, and the shit was running down your legs. And we were called dirty pigs, which was not surprising. Anyhow, it was really absolutely terrible there, but eventually I was called and taken to the orchestra. And today, 53 years later, I still play in an orchestra. It's a different orchestra, very different orchestra, and I've handed the mantle of cello playing over to my son. And I'm very happy that he's a very successful soloist. And I have great pleasure in handing over what I actually originally wanted to do to my son. Somewhere here a photograph of me pretending to play the cello on a children's broom. So my parents bought me a little cello, which was so small that my mother could hold it like a violin, just a very, very small cello. That's how I started. Here are my parents. And here's a photograph of the whole family still together. I don't know, I always wanted to play the cello. It's an escape somehow, music, you know. I escaped into music as well. There are lots of things I don't remember that happened in Birkenau or in Auschwitz that my comrades tell me about, and I think what I had a method of closing myself up in a bubble and playing music to myself. You know, you can play music to yourself. You wouldn't know whether I happen to play a concerto at the moment or not in my brain. I'm very often asked, does it feel like if I play music, perhaps the same music as I played in Auschwitz? Number one, what we played in Auschwitz has very little to do with the stuff that I'm playing now. It's a different world. Okay, let's say Marche Militaire by Schubert is something that I played in the camp. The Träumerei is really a piece for piano, which I've heard my husband play. I mean, it's part of a work by Schumann. No. It doesn't make any difference. Just doesn't mean anything to me, really. It's another world. You know, I live in another world now. Another chapter, finished with that. And it took 50 years of people to start asking questions, because I think it took 2 generations for people to have the courage to ask questions. And I feel more and more that it isn't all that important to tell them exactly what it feels like to be starving, to be cold, to be lost, to be nothing, to be reduced to nothing. First of all, because it's impossible, and then I don't think it's so important that you know exactly what it feels like. I think it's important to realize that such situations are just not acceptable. But unfortunately, the world doesn't look so wonderful even now. So perhaps we are a bit late telling the story, or trying to tell the story. Still, one must try at least. I still don't think that anybody can get anywhere near, actually. No, you can't actually describe it or show it in pictures, but you can't show the smell, for instance, and the misery. There are no words really in the vocabulary to describe what went on. After the liberation, I was called as a witness, and these people, these lovely people, were at the trial, and there was a tremendous fuss about Irma Grese, who was supposed to be a pretty lady, and I always had the feeling that the people were much more interested in a pretty lady who was really an absolute horror of a person than in us, in a way. And the questions one was asked were so absolutely idiotic. We would be asked, did you see Karma kill somebody? And if you said, yes, I did, they would ask you, what day was it? What time was it? I mean, totally ridiculous questions. We didn't know what day it was, we didn't have any watches, and anyhow, it was totally unimportant.
I've seen many terrible sights in the last 5 years, but nothing approaching the dreadful interior of this hut at Belsen.
I escaped the worst fate that can happen to you in Auschwitz because I was recognized as the cellist when there was a selection in the Revier. We had a relatively privileged position, partly because we had an identity and we had a job. When I was ill with typhus, which was something that nobody escaped, I was lying in the Revier, which was the block for the sick people. And there was a selection, which meant everybody had to get up and parade naked in front of the people who took the selection. And I have vague memories of 2 SS men standing on my at the end of my bed, and one of them said to the other, "This is the cellist," and they passed. If I'd had to get up, I wouldn't be here to tell the story today. I love England, I love London. It suits me fine. I mean, I've seen practically the whole world, and I'm always very pleased to be back in London. You know, before the war, my father always wanted to come to England. It was always difficult to emigrate. I don't know really, we applied probably much too late. We probably applied much too late. We never got a permit to come here. And my father and mother were deported to a place near Lublin, where the method of killing people was to dig. They had made them dig graves and undress themselves, and they were shot into these graves. My grandmother, aged 82, was also deported. I have no idea where to. She probably didn't live very long anymore. Everybody is dead, except my sister and myself. We survived.